fundamental role of the president to communicate with the American people. Now that serves a strictly governmental function at times to tell people about how they can get health care, how they can get a tax refund, or prepare for a hurricane coming. And the traditional tools that allow you to do that, network television, cable television, newspapers, reach a dramatically diminishing part of the audience. So a huge part of what we had to do in the course of that time was learn how to leverage those tools to do that. So that's incredibly important on the governmental side. Then you have to communicate in two other fashions. One is to try to get your agenda passed, and that's to sort of motivate public opinion. And the president has had very good success at that in some areas, and other places ran into a wall of sort of polarization and partisanship and sort of the split government we have in Washington. And then, but the other way, which I think is one way in which as we think about the long arc of this presidency where he's been most successful from a communications perspective, and his willingness to experiment with new communication strategies, new technologies, viewing the presidency as a platform of engagement, not strictly communication, has been in helping move the ball forward in public opinion on things that are very core to him. When we started running for president, think about this, the idea that marriage equality was something was opposed by a majority of this country, and it was something that almost every political figure would be afraid to touch.
That's right.
Republicans, the conservative economic view from Reagan of lower taxes and smaller government was the predominant way. The idea in immigration, in the Democratic primary, if the president got a question on immigration in most states, it was from the right about loose borders and people taking jobs. These are Democratic primary voters asking the president the sort of questions that you now hear 8 years later at a Donald Trump event. And on climate change was a sort of a much more picayune issue politically. It was not as, it was the Democratic Party itself was divided on it. And over the course of a very aggressive and concerted effort over time, the president has moved the ball. Let's take guns too, because that's in the news right now. It moved to a place, moving public opinion forward there. Action hasn't happened on all of those things, but he views part of it as helping shape the public opinion environment so that after his presidency, additional progress on these areas is possible. And he can, if he communicated like a traditional president, which every time we did something unconventional, whether it was have the president hold a selfie stick with BuzzFeed or get interviewed by Zach Galifianakis on Between Two Ferns or do a YouTube interview, which now seems completely normal. In 2009, like the Washington conventional wisdom punditocracy, flipped out. We were demeaning the president. You're putting him on the internet, but doing all of those things a lot was.
It wasn't the internet. It was Zach.
Sorry, right. Not that, but even just sitting with Steve Grove from YouTube and taking questions was seen as somehow demeaning the president. Zach Galifianakis is up for fair debate. I will say that. But doing all that was crucial to our success, and I think actually fundamentally changed the way that all presidents going forward, Republican or Democrat, will engage with the public.
I think the president's done an amazing job of figuring out how to navigate a really complex media landscape and get a message out to a lot of different audiences. One of the things going back to 2008 that I think is very interesting is that many of you in this room may have been familiar with myBarackObama.com and some of the technology that was built there to help groups of people organize together. I think that there's a promise in that idea, and I think you saw that in the Dean campaign using Meetup, and you've seen that in these different moments of people trying to use the internet. There's a promise there that hasn't been realized, and what I think it is the opportunity for more bottom-up self-organization that can plug into something formal and somewhat centralized and top-down, and you kind of have to have both of those. And for a long time now, our mass media has really been very centralized and has tapped into a model in which candidates and nonprofits raise a bunch of money and then do a lot of direct marketing to mobilize people who don't really want to hear the message. And trying to nudge them to give that $1 because of guilt or whatever it is, right? And actually, oddly enough, I just downloaded the Field the Burn app. How many of you have checked that thing out? Probably a good number here in San Francisco. No? Okay. It's a Hillary crowd. I won't even go to the other side of the app. But interestingly, I downloaded the app, and it had a deep dive on all the issues with infographics and videos, which was amazing. It had this really cool map, and I could geolocate myself. And then I had my profile with my achievements for how many votes I had gathered. But I was looking at it and saying, where are the people? There's no, there's no conversation and bottom-up power building through creating a community of action that can sustain itself over time. And even with successes online today, like SOPA PIPA, it was a very quick no. It wasn't, we're a group of people who maybe want change around gun laws, who are going to build power and capacity over time. I guess my background and bias is toward grassroots organizing, so that's kind of how we see the world in our company. But I think there's a promise there that technology hasn't realized, and that even for everything President Obama's done, campaigning and in office, it's been amazing, that's going to be the future of getting elected, but also sustaining efforts to get things done once in office.